If you've been following our readings from Genesis over the past few weeks, you might have thought about what they're telling us about the patriarch Jacob, and we might learn from him. Jacob, you'll remember, is the second-born twin to Rebekah and Isaac, and he has an older brother, Esau. The clue to his story and character is in the name. Jacob means he supplants, meaning to take the place of another by force, scheming, or strategy. We might be more familiar with supplanting in politics, but Jacob's attempts at supplanting seem to start in the womb. The suggestion is that he emerges holding on to Esau's ankle. The implication being that Jacob has been trying to hold his brother back so that he can be born first. Jacob is described as a quiet man who prefers to stay at home in the tent rather than going out like his hairy and thick-set brother to hunt game. Jacob is loved by his mother, but his father loves Esau. Whilst Jacob doesn't win the fight to be born first, he spends his life trying to regain his losses, first trading his brother's birthright for a bowl of stew as he encounters a hungry Esau returning from the hunt. And Jacob then deceives his father Isaac, so the blind old man gives his deathbed blessing to Jacob, his younger son, resulting in the older coming to serve the younger. The supplanting continues through Jacob's life. He inherits God's blessing rather than Esau, to be next in the line of the patriarchs, to be led towards the promised land. He leaves home after taking Esau's blessing to find a wife and works for 14 years for Laban. He leaves Laban, now his father-in-law, with Laban's 2 daughters as wives, and takes more sheep with him than he leaves behind because of a deal he struck with his father-in-law. The context of today's reading is Jacob fearing that all his sly accumulation of goods and wealth is going to catch up with him. Jacob's returning from Haran, which he effectively fled to after taking his brother's blessing, back to his father Isaac's land in Canaan. As Jacob approaches his homeland, he sees that Esau is coming towards him from the southeast with 400 men. Jacob fears the worst and makes plans to appease his brother and to divide his household so that only half may be captured. With this looming disaster, Jacob sends his 2 wives ahead over the Jordan and is left alone. And here he seems to pray. The scriptures describe an intense encounter with God, such that he wrestles with a man, presumably God or an angel of the Lord, until daybreak. The 2 struggle together, one not able to overcome the other, until finally the angel pushes Jacob's hip out of place. Jacob Epstein's depiction of Jacob and the angel wrestling is one I've always found powerful. God and Jacob are made by Epstein as very solid, very physical figures. The alabaster statue communicates power and solidity, with see-through stone suggesting that what is going on here is more than human. The huge, thick wings at the back of the angel make it look like an immovable object. You'll remember that even after Jacob's hip gives out, Jacob will not let go of the angel. We see here Jacob being held by the angel, perhaps giving the blessing which Jacob insists he must have before he will leave the struggle. Looking closely, we can see Jacob's right hip twisted and turned out, his heel raised. We don't know the meaning of this wrestling, whether Jacob is struggling with fear or guilt as he returns to face the music of the brother he's aggrieved, or if this encounter with God as Jacob returns to the promised land is about Jacob's own relationship with God and Jacob's future as he is renamed Israel. But we do know that Jesus would often go off to quiet places and pray through the night, just as Jacob prays through the night here. And sometimes that praying of Jesus looks more like wrestling, a determined struggle to work out with God what will happen next, what God's purpose is. Whenever anything is about to happen, Jesus goes to a quiet place and at least attempts to pray. I wonder how you wrestle with God. Personally, I find pieces of art very helpful in making me think, and Etzheim's statue is among those I return to in order to help me to work out what God is saying. What do you do to engage with God? Do you have a quiet place you go to think? Do you have a steady discipline of returning to the scriptures to hear the Lord's voice? Do you have a spiritual companion or group you meet and pray and talk with? Each of these can help us to wrestle with God and can give God an opportunity to meet us with his embrace. Jesus' praying in today's gospel precedes the feeding of the 5,000. We tend to focus on the miracle of multiplication, but seen in the context of the wider story that's being told, this is an account of the disciples taking their first steps to take over Jesus' ministry. Jesus' words to his disciples are sharp. You give them something to eat. But the disciples learn that if they will only trust Jesus and follow his commandment, they can share in his work. Jesus is giving us an example, living an example for them, and he's showing us an example too. We're at a time of significant change as a church community, as a nation, and even globally. Surely God is calling us aside to wrestle with him and pray. So let us respond. Let us take time aside with God and be ready to wrestle with him and be changed. Then, like Jacob, God can take the rough and the smooth in us and be clear that he won't be supplanted as our Lord and Master, even if others are supplanted. Rather, as we wrestle with God, he will bless us and rename us so that we may show others what it means to be in his covenant and promise and draw them into the same.